G'day everyone, it's Gilbert or Gilbo and looking at the wheels of time today. This is a theory of everything that I built from my mid-teens, and it's based on polarity, specifically three fundamental polarities: yin-yang, heaven-earth or being-non-being, and separate-connected. So I was 16 years old, I think, and I had been reading in the I Ching, or the Book of Changes, the foundational text for Chinese civilization, really. It's thousands of years old, with the last person to do a major edit on the text was Confucius. And it looks at the way that yin and yang forces interact in a consistent pattern. So you can think about three polar spatial pairs. So front, back, left, right, up, down, and subsequently you end up with front, right, up, front, left, up, front, left, down, back, left, down, etc. You've got 8 spaces in that via those three poles. And likewise, we're thinking here about more, this is more in the interactions within the world. So we got these 3 poles here, 3 fundamental polarities, and they look at the way that we interact. So you can think of those 8, then there's interaction. So we end up with 64 basic polar conditions described in the I Ching, and that number 64 keeps coming up for us as soon as we start looking at binary polar circumstances. So I was reading that book just briefly. I was talking to a family member and went home, and the following day I was lying in my bed. I was thinking, forces interacting in a consistent pattern, it's got to make a shape. And then everything went dark, and I saw a semicircle flashing in front of my eye. Looked like a fluoro light bulb maybe, but it was, I could see there was a profound spiritual truth there and great beauty. And the following day I was sort of a bit shocked by all of that, thinking about it again, and on my bed again, and dark, and this time a straight line was flashing. So then we start with this shape here. We've got yin and yang, doesn't matter which side for now, and we got neutral in the middle. So polar forces combining together to create a neutral. So these polar characteristics of nature, there's an infinite number of them. We find them everywhere. So we've got here on this deep and shallow, rough and smooth, hot and cold, steep, flat, quiet, loud, full, empty, shiny, dull. There's an infinite number of them. And what we have is, in between these poles, these polar extremes, we have a specific, we have the beginning of identity. So there's deep, shallow, and in between them we have depth. And there's rough and smooth, and between them we have the specific texture. And there's steep and flat, and we have the specific gradient. There's quiet and loud, and we have the specific volume. So here we are, yin-yang and neutral. Don't worry about which side's which. And then with this second fundamental polarity here, heaven-earth, we can think of heaven above the earth. We can think of mind and matter, energy, matter, mind and body, being, non-being. So this is the middle, the neutral ground between these extremes of heaven and earth is found in a thing or a subject. So this is the subject darkened here, and this is the rest of the universe that the thing is interacting with. So we can look here at a cyclical pattern to yin and yang as well, where here we're now, instead of these binary pairs combining into defining the characteristic of a particular thing, here we have influence and yield. So we can look at a four-part interaction. We're going to use the fan here, the ruler as a fan. We're going to say the fan pushes the wind, and then the wind is pushed. The wind resists the fan's push, and the fan feels the wind's resistance. So there's four-part balanced interaction. They're all of equal strength. But what we've done is we've divided that interaction into the four parts by splitting it into the internal and external and yin and yang forces. So then what we also need to think about here is the way that we can think about the physicality of the earth, and then as we interact with that physicality, there's an energetic element to it, the interaction. And there's the energetic realm of heaven, and as we're with that, there's a physical aspect. So we get this crossover between, in the bridge, in that neutral subject, we get this crossover between heaven and earth that's tied up in the body of the thing. So here we've actually written energy, even though we could consider this as the earthly realm and the heavenly realm. We got energy and physical matter up there. And that's because on the subject, on the thing, it's the energetic aspect is lower, and this is the physical aspect. You can see it looks like a person. So this becomes like the arms here, there's the physicality in the arms, and there's the energetic realm in the lower region. So I didn't draw it to look like a person. I just followed the logic. It took about 15 years until I built up this pattern. I just followed the logic, and it just happened to look like a person. And so what I say is that people have evolved to resemble the shape. The shape hasn't been made to resemble people. So when we're interacting here, we've got an energetic aspect and a physical aspect. And in this context here, what we're talking about is that this is an energetic blueprint for the manifestation above. So we're kind of feeding up like that and flowering into actual existence, material existence. And so in this sense, this energetic blueprint here, it's pushing out its force, and it's reading the force it's yielding to the force coming in. But what's happening is this becomes like a reader. So it's reading what's happening to it as it happens, and it's putting out the force that it's putting out already contains the force that's being put back into it. The influencing force already contains the yielding force, and that's what's snapping that material reality into existence. And so that the knowing of what's happening to it as it happens on this center line here, you have a transitory awareness, which becomes the foundation of true consciousness that we'll look at. So this transitory awareness is everywhere in the material universe, not just in conscious beings. Transitory. So this you can look at as physical awareness, mental awareness. That's all we need to say here about this second fundamental polarity, heaven-earth, and we're looking at the cyclical nature as well of yin and yang. So then the thing is separate from its surrounds, but it's also connected. Both is true. So we end up with this third fundamental polarity here of separate and connected. And once we're looking at this polarity, we're looking at conscious beings, living organisms. So, and with that, we get these two secondary circles here. And they find their size in the same way that these ones are related to one another. This is the length of a radius. This is the length of a radius. And so these ones, there's the small radius separating them. So this radius is 1/3 the size of the large radius. And this one is around our heart. And we call it the house of the mind. For now, it has another aspect that we'll talk about in a moment. But it's called the house of the mind. and then it relates to the legs down here where we've got written learn and teach. And so it houses evolved capacity to, we'll talk about 4 functions of consciousness that I haven't got written on here. But this house of the evolved body here around the sexual organ or root is the house of the evolved physical consciousness. So physical organism. So in terms of those 4 functions of consciousness, we've got a more physical aspect. In the physical, we've got just the basic biological functions of breathing in, breathing out, eat, poop, etc. We call them what we like, the basic biophysical conditions. And then more physical mental, we've got sensing and moving, like the dexterity and the capacity to see, the capacity to hear, etc. And these are related to this house of the evolved body and to this physical awareness here. And then related to mental awareness and to the house of the evolved mind and to this energetic aspect down here. I've got learn and teach written here, which is fine, but then we can divide it again and say we've got a focus and manipulate, which is like seeing as looking as compared to seeing, listening as compared to hearing, and manipulate to actually yang aspect, do something physically and deliberately with the mind applied to it. And then the 4th one here, we can look at analyze and plan, where we're looking into the future and we're looking into the past to understand the world and how we are in it. So from the most physical to the most mental, we again seeing this crossover between the heaven and earth being built into the material structures and into the capacity of our mind, our ability to act consciously as yin and yang forces flip over one another. So just dropping back for intro to yin and yang, yang is the more masculine, active, powerful force. Yin is feminine, receptive, passive. But again, back with these conditions of deep and shallow, it's not that one is yang and one is yin. That depends on the context. Deep might be powerful or deep might be passive, depending on the context. The main point here is just the polarity. And again, don't think about it too much. Just let it sink in, see how it feels in the world, I suppose, whether it fits with observation. So we just talked about 4 functions of consciousness associated with evolved capacity of the mind and the body. And then we can also look with these secondary circles at 4 primary motivations. So here we've got again physical, mental, physical, and mental. So we'll look at them in terms of these circles here. So these become the centers of our motivation and emotion. And this one motivates us towards what's fair and towards connection and communing with our surrounds and interacting with them in the common good. So we got fair, unfair, and empathy, isolation, related to this heart, the house of the evolved mind, and the center for connectedness. And then with the house of the evolved body, also the center for separateness, And this motivates us towards physical pleasure as opposed to what's displeasurable, and towards being in control as compared to being afraid. So we have this amongst the physicality and mentality. Then there is this motivation on the one hand to control our surrounds, and motivation on the other hand to commune with our surrounds. And there we get these parallel rivers of cooperation and competition, separateness, connectedness, power, gentleness. The way that we interact in the world occurs within this binary framework, and the application of that, understanding those parallel rivers of separateness and connectedness, that's been the main focus for me, especially in relation to ethics and politics. But as you can see, we can look at it as a description of the psyche there, and we can build up like a system of understanding psyche and psychology through this same pattern. You can probably note that it seems a bit Jungian, and Jung has indeed looked through the same lens of this polarity, so that he actually wrote the foreword for the translation of the I Ching that I have. So and me, not really influenced by Jung, I've never actually read Jung, but we end up with these same kinds of introvert, extrovert, whatever. Jung has constructed his psychology in that polar framework. So we're doing the same thing here, but we've got our own system. And what we can look at beyond these primary emotions, we can talk about secondary or complex emotions, whereby we're combining them in the same circumstance. We're not just experiencing pleasure or displeasure. At the same time, we might be experiencing fair or unfair, control or fear, or empathy, isolation, and they happen in combination, and they can either be reinforcing of one another or antagonizing to one another. So, for example, if something is pleasurable and we're in control of it, we'll be going, yeah, bring it on. Or if something is, we feel in connection to it, but we think it's unfair, we'll be in two minds. We won't know how to deal with it properly. So we've got these positive negatives associated with these primary emotions, and then they become complex in circumstances when they're all joined together. And then also we can look at tertiary emotions with the formation of personality, etc. So we can imagine for a baby when they're experiencing, if something is unfair and you're not connected to it and you think it's yucky, then it's like, great, you know exactly what you're doing and you don't want it anywhere near you. And you're reinforced in your feeling about what's right and what's wrong, and that you know how to deal with the world. But then if you've got something that's pleasurable but you're scared of it, for example, or if you think it's fair but it's yucky, then you've got this sort of again, you're in two minds. And as a baby, these patterns will come up and you'll be confused, and you'll build this confusion into your personality. So I haven't looked in detail at developmental psychology or the different forms of that personality might evolve in through these polar pairs, but it clearly gives us a framework where that work could be done. So for me, this theory, the main process has just been in the application of the idea of polarity. So we've got a polar cosmology, being yin and yang. This can be contrasted against the individualism that has dominated the last 500 years. So there was René Descartes, a name that keeps coming up. He thought, therefore he was, and using that dictum, he then suggested that the individual human consciousness is the starting point of philosophical inquiry. And so this methodological individualism influenced people, for example, like a slightly more controversial example, but Charles Darwin. So we're going to say that Darwin, describing natural selection, great, I support the idea of natural selection, But Darwin has emphasised a competition between separate individuals, with cooperation as like a subset of that overarching competition. So I think a better way to understand that is that there's a pattern of interactions, and so some of those interactions are cooperative, some of them are competitive, and it's the ecosystem as a whole, as well as the individual variations that will allow or disallow particular traits and the progress of evolution along particular lines. It's not just the individual, but it's the collective organism, collective ecosystem. And so we're not going to get into that. I just think that Darwin has failed to stress the parallel rivers of cooperation and competition that provide the framework within which interactions occur. But less controversial, we've had what's called liberalism, which is the application of methodological individualism to political theory. So we've got the individual human rights, cosmopolitan ethics, liberal democracy, where ideal governance has been described in terms of the freedoms of individuals. And we've got, of course, competitive free market economics, Adam Smith suggesting that a free competition between individuals will lead to efficient outcomes in economics. So using this polar cosmology, what we're able to do is to redefine these ideals. So our identity and our rights derive to us not only as individuals, but also from collective source. So we have rights as community members that people outside the community don't have. So it's not just about individual rights, it's about collective rights. And our identity is not just defined by us, but it's defined by our relationships. And economic ideals are not just defined by a competition between individuals, but also through cooperation between mutually supporting people. And governance as well, where, for example, a major omission from that liberal theory of liberal democracy is the idea that people can benefit by organising themselves collectively to govern themselves. Not just about individual freedom, but also about social cohesion. And of course, through this cosmology, we have the idea of the middle way or the golden mean. So that's become an increasingly significant derivative from this theory for me over the years. The idea that there's only one religion. It's got many names. It's found in the middle way or the golden mean. So it's always now. It's about people making judgments now, and we don't want to be too strong. We don't want to be too weak. We want to be soft and very strong together, because when they work together, they're mutually supportive. And when we're able to bring that balance, then what happens is we got this side organised and this side organised. Then they're working together and the heart becomes purified. The mind ascends to heaven and positive outcomes flow through us to the earth. So we've got that common framework for ethics and religion, which provides us with a previously described but forgotten in the modern era ethic for how we can construct socio-political structures. And then subsequently, with the Confucio Multidom Hyperfantastico, this one, I'll just scroll it up there because you'll find it elsewhere. We have a common framework for ethics and religion and a global political program. That's been the kind of the culmination of this work for me as of to date. And So you'll be able to read about that elsewhere. But this is the Wheels of Time, which has provided the foundation for the polar analysis that I've done my best to apply to the world in my efforts to help make the world a better place and to realise my own motives, both private and collective. Okay, that's it, the Wheels of Time.